Should we address social ills? Yes. Should we bring them to consciousness? Yes. But remember Romans 3:8. You must never do evil that good might come of it. There's a passage in the 3rd chapter of Paul's letter to the Romans, which is of enormous moment in the history of moral theology. In the context of Paul's letter, it seems a little bit tossed off, but man, has it played an important role. And let me read it to you, and then I want to do some commentary on it. It's Romans 3, verse 8. And here it is. And why not say, as some people slander us by saying that we say, let us do evil so that good may come. Their condemnation is deserved. Now, I'll grant you it's a little bit convoluted, the way Paul puts that, but the principle is simply this. We may not do evil that good may come of it. You can't do evil that good might come of it. Now, let me put this in some perspective. The great Greek philosopher Aristotle said, there are vicious people. Now, a vicious person is someone who does evil because he likes it. He does evil really for its own sake. He's been habituated to doing evil. At the extreme of the vicious person is what he calls the beast-like man. Think here maybe of like a professional assassin or something. You know, someone who does truly wicked things with absolutely no compunction. Okay, there are such people. But most of us who do bad things can usually find some justification, right? We say, well, yeah, I'm not really proud of what I did, but it's because it had some really good consequences or something really good came of it, or, you know, my purpose in doing that was. We use end justifies the means kind of reasoning. We say, in some cases, you can do evil because such good things came of it. Now, following Paul, Romans 3:8, the church has for 2,000 years stood athwart that kind of thinking. Now, how come? Because it denies effectively the existence of intrinsically evil acts. That's to say, an act that is by its very nature so disordered that no motivation, no desire, no consequence, no circumstance could ever justify it, right? It's bad in itself. It can't be done. Examples abound. So we say slavery, for example, is intrinsically evil. We say that the sexual abuse of children is intrinsically evil. We say the direct killing of the innocent is intrinsically evil. We say condemning an innocent person, that's intrinsically evil. These are all things that can never be justified. Okay, you say, you know, so far so obvious. But you know what I've been thinking about a lot recently is how this principle is being dishonored, not so much at the individual level, but at the more global cultural level. That our culture is kind of countenancing doing bad things for the sake of some greater good. Now, I'm going to give some examples, and I'm sure fruitlessly, but encourage people, look, I'm not so much interested in the details of all these cases. That's not my point. It's simply to use them to make the overall point, okay? So the first one is the O.J. Simpson case from 1995, I think it was. I remember it very vividly. And, you know, I don't really know any thoughtful, objective person who doesn't think O.J. Simpson was guilty of the crimes that he was accused of. And yet he was acquitted by a jury of his peers, and a large segment of the population probably still thinks it was okay that he was acquitted. Now, how come? What's usually invoked is something like this. Well, you know, African Americans were victims of racial profiling. The LAPD, and let's face it, police departments in general often engaged in evidence tampering and other, you know, bad things to single out African Americans for persecution. And so because of that abuse, well, we're going to send a signal. By acquitting O.J. Simpson, we're going to send a signal that this overarching problem should be addressed. The end justifying the means. So, and again, I'm not that interested in debating all the details of the case, but what appears certainly to be a guilty man going free so that a greater social good might be addressed. Doing evil that good might come of it. Now, something very like the OJ case, I think, occurred much more recently in Australia, in the very sad case of Cardinal George Pell. I'm sure you all know the details there. George Pell was accused of a crime. The outrageous nature of the accusation, I mean, the almost physical impossibility of Pell doing what he was accused of doing, the almost complete lack of any corroborating evidence, I think should lead any reasonable person to say he shouldn't have even been brought to trial, much less convicted, but indeed he was convicted. When an appeal was made, the conviction was upheld, and just a few weeks ago, I would say, thank God, he was finally exonerated. But here's my point. When people were asked about the Pell thing, what they would typically say is, well, we got a huge problem in Australia. The problem of priests sexually abusing children, the church not responding adequately, and I think that's true. There has been, probably still is, this great social ill. Therefore, to raise consciousness about it, to address it, will countenance the condemnation of a pretty clearly innocent man. Again, the end justifying the means. A willingness to do evil that good might come of it. Now, one that I think we're all surrounded by today, a third example of this principle. The Harvey Weinstein thing and the Me Too movement. Does any reasonable person deny that this is a real social ill? That, men and women, but let's say especially women, have been indeed abused in terrible ways by especially men in positions of power. And that bringing this to consciousness, addressing it institutionally, personally, etc., is a good thing. I don't think any reasonable person denies that. I certainly don't deny it. However, and again, just to show I'm not trying to grind any political axe, look at the two cases of Justice Kavanaugh and now former Vice President Joe Biden. The worry is in both those cases, there was a rush to judgment, a desire simply to condemn these men without proper investigation, without proper trial. Now, why? Well, because there's this gross social injustice of the abuse of women by powerful men. Therefore, you got to break a few eggs to make an omelet. Maybe we can justify bad behavior to attain a greater good. Again, please, I'm not debating the details of either case. That's not my point. My point is, Paul's principle remains of enormous importance, both at the interpersonal level and at the cultural, societal level. Now, here's why. When you suspend that principle, you are effectively denying the presence of intrinsically evil acts. You're saying, I could find a justification for pretty much anything. So condemnation of an innocent man, all right, if it achieves the good, you should do it. Letting a guilty person go, all right, if it conduces toward a general good, off you go. The trouble is when you do that, when you deny the existence of intrinsically evil acts, the furies come. And I'll give you a very good example from history. The time of the French Revolution, the terreur that followed the revolution. Sweep everybody to the guillotine, right? Has there been a gross social injustice? Yes, obviously. The aristocratic classes of 18th century France who had been for centuries oppressing the poor and all these terrible things. No question about it. There was a terrible social ill that had to be addressed. Therefore, sweep everybody to the guillotine. Are they guilty? Fine. Not guilty? No problem. The slightest suspicion, send them to the guillotine. I can do all kinds of wicked things to justify what I perceive to be a good end. Now, I say it's a good example because when you read that terrible history, how quickly it turned on the perpetrators of the terreur. The authors of it, think of Robespierre and his colleagues, were themselves guillotined. Because once you suspend that principle, you can do anything to justify a good end, then you will be the victim of it next. Remember that great scene? It's in Man for All Seasons, my favorite movie. And it's Moore talking to Roper, his son-in-law. And William Roper is this guy full of, religious passion and vigor. And he says at one point to Moore, to get to the devil, I would cut down every law in England. And Moore says to him, and when the devil turns round on you, where would you hide, Roper, all the laws being flat? I give the devil benefit of the law for my own safety's sake. It's an extraordinary speech, and he's making the same point I'm trying to make here today, is do whatever, to get at the devil, I'll do anything. I'll knock down every law. I'll violate any principle. What do you do then, man, when the devil turns around on you? There'll be no place to hide, Which is why it's very dangerous in our society to engage and indulge in this kind of thinking. This end justifies the means. Should we address social ills? Yes. Should we bring them to consciousness? Yes. But remember Romans 3:8. You must never do evil that good might come of it. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, I encourage you to share it and be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel.